In-Laws and Crime. I'm Ashley.
I am Megan. This is In-Laws and Crime. Yay.
It's been a week. It's been a hectic last 2 weeks.
It has been a crazy town few weeks for me and you, I feel like.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild.
It's been one thing after another.
It really has. I don't know what's going on.
And everybody I've talked to, they've said the same thing.
They're having
so
the same
we're not
kind of week.
alone. I think my friend Chelsea always says Mercury's in the microwave. Instead of Mercury's
I like
in
that.
retrograde.
Mercury's in the microwave.
Yeah, it's been, me and Ashley have had some things happening behind the scenes that is insane. Our personal lives are insane. Our work is
lives.
insane. So it has been a lot, but here we are to bring you part 2 of KFC murders.
And I can't wait.
It's a lot.
We're going to skip all of our files this
We're
evening.
skipping all of our files today because one, we have some, but we're going to do some further digging on them, I think. We'll tell y'all next week.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. And 2, this is going to be crunch time on the time, I think. So we'll see. But I think we're just going to jump right in.
Let's jump in.
We're going to jump right in because my kids are outside. We're at the lake house and my husband has my kids outside. And if mind your business, if you hear kids yelling in the background.
It couldn't be any worse than Bambi and her crowing in the front yard.
Or Patchy barking.
I
was re-listening to our episode the other day and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, when I was listening to it.
So sorry, guys.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't think it would pick up Bambi, but it did. If you listen real close, you can hear her in the background.
Yeah, clucking away. Goodness.
All right.
Okay, here we go. So, like I said, part 2. If you have not listened to part 1, please go back because you're not going to know what in the hell I'm talking about. So, all these names and stuff, you're going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So, go stop now, go listen to part 1 and come back. And here we are. Okay, you're back. Okay, good. Okay, so references for part 2 is once again the book that I read, which is called The KFC Murders, a news account by Jacqueline Hilburn /Simmons and Kenneth Dean of the Tyler Morning Telegraph. And then medium.com, dallasnews.com, dps.texas.gov, and kltv.com were my references for part 2. Okay, so I think where we left off at in part 1 is they had kind of packed everything away and were not going anywhere. And the case was turning very, very cold. So I
think a decade had passed.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. In the 1990s, the state's 48th Texas Attorney General, Dan Morals, was trying to boost political traction and gain the public's confidence as a man who could get things done. He served from 1991 through 1999, during which time he helped orchestrate a $17 billion settlement with big tobacco companies. $17 billion.
Wow.
That's a crap ton of money. Morals agreed to take over the investigation and prosecution of the stalled KFC murder case in November 1993 at the request of former Rusk County District Attorney Kyle Freeman. At this point, the cold case was so complex, the prosecution's office did not have sufficient resources to work the case and take it to jury. Morals agreed to take a new look at the case in which was largely hinging on the stray fingernail sliver that was found in the waistband of victim Joey Johnson during the autopsy. So in part 1, we discussed that during an autopsy, Joey Johnson, a fingernail sliver falls out from his waistband. They compare it to everyone, no match, but they made it a cast of Mankins' finger, which in an interview, one of the Texas Rangers noticed his fingernail had been ripped off in the same way that this fingernail sliver was found. So, and they believed it was a match. Much of the attention on James Mankins Jr., which is who Texas Ranger Dow believed the fingernail clipping belonged to, seemed to center on his repeated run-ins with law enforcement over drug and firearm charges, including an arrest the day of the murders for unlawful carrying of a weapon. In 1985, he was sentenced to serve 3 years of federal talking's going to be really hard. Going to go ahead and say
Okay.
that. So it's been a long day. In 1985, he was sentenced to serve 3 years of federal time for using the phone to distribute and sell methamphetamine. When Morals took over the KFC case, a special grand jury was convened to begin hearing from possible witnesses and reviewing related evidence in the case. Morals also started to meet with all the families of the victims and re-interview them and get their stories and stuff like that. And to reassure them that he was trying to get this solved. The state began issuing subpoenas as well to compel testimony from those with possible firsthand knowledge about the kidnapping and murders. A lot of the attention was still focused, though, on Mankins Jr., one of about 20 people responding to the subpoenas. The Tyler Morning Telegraph published the witness list, which included some of Mankins' known associates, friends, and family. This next part, guys. As well as investigators and scientists. Among those witnesses was Lenore Lenny Ruby, nicknamed Tiger Lady.
Tiger Lady.
For once possessing a large Bengal tiger, who said she was happy to testify.
What?
Just automatically when I read that, I went straight to
How do you
Tiger
acquire? Yeah. How do you acquire?
I think that
Bengal
was
tiger?
a common thing back then.
How?
I don't know. My aunt
You have a story?
dated a guy.
Oh. Yes.
Not saying any names, dated a guy that had a tiger. This was an East Texas thing, I think. East Texas, Oklahoma thing.
Not all of us had tigers.
No.
I'm just saying, not all of us.
But
did
she
that.
dated a guy that had a baby tiger. And I remember going to her house one day and they were playing with a baby tiger in their yard.
Well, you've held on to that little nugget for a while.
I'm sorry. I'm
I didn't know that you had that little life experience.
Things, you learn something new about me every day.
I do.
There you go.
Okay.
Y'all are welcome for that little
All right.
nugget of my life.
Tiger Lady.
Yeah. Ruby stated she knew the Junior Mankins well and even picked him up from jail the day of the murders after he was jailed on the weapons charge. She said she cooperated earlier with the authorities to keep her drug selling operation up and going.
Are we really surprised that she had a tiger and ran drugs?
I mean, that goes hand in hand, I
think
feel like.
it kind of does.
That goes hand in hand. Tiger, drugs, automatically. Ruby said Texas Ranger Glenn Elliott didn't shut down her as long as she agreed to turn over any guns, jewelry, and any other items that could be linked to the KFC murders.
Interesting.
Obviously, Elliott denied this strongly, saying he did not observe the legal sales, but reported unlawful activity to the proper authorities. So there's that. The following month, more than a decade after the murders, the news families had been waiting for arrived. Morals stood outside the Rusk County Courthouse and announced that a KFC grand jury on April 27th, 1995, handed up 5 capital murder indictments against Mankins, who had allegedly turned himself in to authorities.
So he all of a sudden just owned up to it?
Mm-hmm. No, he didn't own up to it. He's been cooperating with them.
Oh, okay.
He's been cooperating with them. And when they charged him, he turned himself in.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So, retired FBI agent George Kinney attended the news conference. He had come out of retirement to work as an investigator for the Texas Attorney General's office and help out in the case. He wanted to fully retire, but simply could not walk away from the job, leaving East Texas's most heinous.
Yes.
Heinous? Is it heinous? Guys, leaving the crime unsolved. Listen, that's been a day. A high bond was set at $2.5 million or $500,000 for each charge in hopes of keeping Mankins behind bars. Mankins, dressed in an orange inmate jumpsuit, pleaded not guilty to the charges before District Judge Donald Ross. R. Darrell Bennett, a defense attorney, stepped in to represent Mankins. He argued for a bond reduction, claiming his client lacked the assets to raise the minimum amount necessary to hire a bail bondsman, which I think that was the point, sir. I read that and I was like, well, yeah, they're wanting to keep him in there. What he doesn't have enough money to pay that. Well, yeah, no shit. Sorry. Okay. Anyways, the judge disagreed, but Bennett wasn't about to give up. He liked a good challenge and wasn't afraid to acknowledge it would, what did I write? He liked a good challenge and wasn't afraid to acknowledge it to the world. There is how I said it. I almost feel like handing this to you, just making you read it. It's been such a long day.
I mean, honestly, it has. I went to bed at 8:30 the other night.
Yeah,
I was asleep.
It's been
day. Yeah, it's been crazy.
And when I drive a lot for my job, my real job, and I had to come from Dallas. So, and y'all know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a freaking joke and all by itself. Okay, so he liked a good challenge and wasn't afraid to acknowledge it to the world, stating, quote, son, he's saying this to a reporter, a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich, but that don't make that sandwich guilty. Oh my gosh. Elizabeth, write that down.
Yeah. Next to, I can stomp on my own snakes.
A grand jury can, I was just about to read it again. Write it down, Elizabeth. I'll read it again for you. Mencken, sorry, this is a hot mess episode today.
I had a hot mess episode not that long ago. You're fine. You're fine.
I hope y'all enjoy it as much as we don't. Okay.
Stop it.
Menckens also addressed the court. So Menckens gets up there and addresses the court, admitting to previous convictions for alcohol, drugs, and weapon offenses, but denying that he was violent or abusive, citing as an example of his willingness to cooperate with authorities, which he had been. He had been doing everything they asked him to do.
And did he have any charges that were violent, like in the past?
No,
okay,
his were all drug related and weapons and stuff.
Okay.
But nothing like
as extreme violent. As all of a sudden 5 deaths. Mm-hmm. Okay.
He was getting charged with like having a gun or drugs and stuff like that.
Okay.
At the bond reduction hearing, Rusk County Sheriff's investigator, Lieutenant Don Wiggins, and our boys, Sergeant Danny Pirtle, testified about what they saw at the crime scene. Rusk County investigator William Brown described the positioning of the bodies, and Texas Ranger Dowell testified as well. Dowell explained how he was present when the fingernail fell out of Johnson's waistband at the autopsy. The Texas Ranger said that two saturation experts, Dr. Irving Stone from Dallas and Lucian Hagg in Phoenix, indicated the fingernail appeared to have come from Menckens based on the comparisons with the cast that they had made. The court was also advised that Southwest Institute for Forensic Science sent the clipping to Gene Screen in Dallas for testing. Dr. Robert Giles said gene screen technology at the time was helpful for narrowing the field of possibilities for a match. Bennett said the screening techniques used as a basis to indicate his client were speculative at best, and he pushed for more definitive, sophisticated testing and a change of venue. The defense attorney also filed dozens of pretrial motions to try and exonerate his client, including one seeking expert assistance in DNA testing on the bloody napkin that was said to have come from the restaurant as well. The motion indicated an analysis of the blood on the napkin during the initial investigation revealed a blood type different from Menckens. Then Rusk County District Attorney Bill Ferguson agreed to seek the opinion of Herbert McDonald of Corning, New York, a well-known saturation expert who testified in the O.J. Simpson trial. A change of venue was also granted, allowing all 5 charges against Menckens to be moved to Jefferson County. About 50 pounds of case files arrived ahead of the trial, surprising the office staff. State District Judge Larry Geist, seeing the arriving mountain of paperwork, was concerned about the pretrial publicity. He issued a gag order, like I should have right now, to ensure Mankins received a fair and impartial trial that was not prejudiced by a circus atmosphere, is what he said.
Yeah. Get him out of the county,
Yeah.
which is being,
Yeah.
committed.
For a time, everyone was so focused on taking Mankins to trial, it seemed unlikely that anything could derail it. Then came an absolute bombshell. Attorneys received the results of the new, more sophisticated DNA tests conducted on the fingernail, and Mankins was not a match.
Wow.
So, with no other definitive evidence linking Mankins to the murders, Geist dismissed all 5 charges against him.
You know, without any sort of violent history, I can see that. Like, you don't just go on this killing spree. You have had no history of violence other than you like drugs, and you shouldn't have a gun because of your prior convictions of drugs.
Yeah.
You know? So I can see that. That was kind of a far stretch.
Yeah.
But then again, the fingernail, what a coincidence.
Yeah. I mean, they were all, gun-ho on that fingernail was a match. So, yeah, I'm sure their hearts just sank to their butt when they learned that. The normally quiet Mankins also issued a public statement expressing his condolences to the families, stating, quote, "Nothing I can ever say to you can convince you that I did not take the lives of your loved ones, or that I have no idea who did. 12 years of rumors and innuendos against me can never be erased from your mind by anything I say or do." Kathy Hamilton, victim David Maxwell's sister, said she was shocked by the development, but expressed confidence that Attorney General Morales would keep his promise and bring closure to the case. Morales, whose pride had been hurt in the recent case developments, vowed to continue seeking a resolution, but little progress was made before he actually left the office. The state's top attorney did eventually appear before a jury, not to try or resolve. This part cracked me up. So he appears before a jury, but not to try or resolve the KFC murders, but to defend charges levied against him, which stemmed from the earlier flagship tobacco settlement he helped negotiate. Morales was convicted of falsifying documents to divert in excess of $500 million in settlement money to another attorney for quote unquote legal fees. In 2004, the disgraced, I know, wild, right?
Okay.
He's sitting on this pedestal like, I'm going to solve this murder, while he's actually like freaking
sitting on a stack of cash.
Yeah. In 2004, the disgraced former prosecutor was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison in Texarkana for mail fraud and filing false income tax statements. Also, in an unexpected twist, he was sent to the same federal prison where Mankins was serving time on charges unrelated to the KFC case.
Can you imagine
the fact that this hasn't been made into a movie is mind-blowing to me. It's just weird because of all these details, right? It's just so crazy.
Yeah.
As the days and weeks passed, the newspaper assembled an expansive array of information, including the original suspect list created by authorities, crime scene photos, scientific test reports, recorded interviews, personal correspondence, and other documents. So the whole time all of this case is like, going around and everything, the news reporters and stuff, and I want to say it was the Tyler Morning Telegraph, had a inside person that was feeding them all of this information, that was feeding them like literally everything, which is not safe, I feel like, or shouldn't be happening. But I mean, I guess that happens all the time, right?
I mean,
so they receive all this crap that the investigators have. This part's going to really piss everybody off.
Bring it.
During this time, the newspaper decides to publish photos of the bodies at the crime scene.
How is that allowed? This was in the 90s, you said? We're in the 90s, I think, still.
In 2004.
Just kidding.
No, that was when he was... I don't know when this was.
Have to answer that.
I was about to say.
But regardless.
It was in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay. That they published How
The
disrespectful to
the bodies,
to
the pictures of the
victims.
bodies.
Oh my gosh.
Could you imagine?
How's that even allowed?
Could you imagine?
How's that even allowed?
It shouldn't be.
How is it
I wonder
allowed
if it
from
still is.
a printing standpoint?
How I don't get it. So listen to the reasoning.
Okay.
Which still doesn't. I mean, anyways. The families were obviously absolutely outraged at this. Publisher Nelson Clyde III felt compelled as a newsman to hold people with the power to make a difference accountable for the lack of progress. He wanted justice and believed the shocking images of those photos would pressure authorities to keep digging for answers. That's playing dirty.
No.
That's playing dirty.
No, absolutely not.
That's taking somebody's photo of a deceased human's body and using it for your gain.
For your own propaganda. Yeah. To sell papers.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that. That was his little excuse. In 2002, the newspaper worked with its confidential sources to publicize the fact that new DNA testing helped authorities link 3 suspects to the murders.
Yay.
Yeah. 2 of the assailants were known to the criminal justice system, meaning their DNA was already logged into the database. The 3rd was not. Authorities refused to acknowledge the revelation in the case, and Rusk County Sheriff James Stroud lashed out at the newspaper for saying so. Stroud said the newspaper was wrong in reporting the information before authorities were ready to move forward, which I can agree.
I mean, this is wrong with journalism all around, isn't it? Like, they just do whatever they want.
Yeah. He never said the information was inaccurate. Okay, so now the 2 heroines of the story come into our lives. A young Texas attorney, Lisa Tanner, hated the horror suffered by the young victims, but enjoyed the challenge of snaring the monsters. With each new case, she felt increased gratitude for her childhood in the tiny Texas town of New Caney. The rookie attorney's toughness, attention to detail, and growing track record of wins soon impressed the bosses at the Attorney General's office, especially a higher-up veteran prosecutor who summoned her to his office one day to extend an offer that she wouldn't be able to refuse. He offered to let her take over the KFC case. Tanner was intrigued by the idea of poking around the cold case, especially one that seemed so twisted. More than a decade had passed since the murders, and everyone in the office knew that the case was peppered with problems. No chain of custody, very few photos, like we said in part 1, a lost evidence log, and a messed up crime scene. In spite of having been on the job only 2 years, Tanner was the obvious choice because she was the only person out of the 6-member office who had prosecuted a case based on DNA evidence. As the stack of boxes started to arrive at Tanner's office, investigator Missy Wolf rounded the corner and almost walked right into the stack of boxes, stating, quote, "Good Lord, they aren't wasting any time on this one." Wolf was Tanner's right hand around the office. The veteran investigator was smart, thoughtful, and meticulous. Numerous officers from multiple different agencies had their hands in the investigation over the years, and there seemed to be no end to the hundreds of file folders. In fact, there were so many records, an entire room was allocated to them, which is crazy.
Wow.
Tanner began to worry that no matter how hard she and Wolf worked on the case, earlier missteps in the investigation might keep justice just out of reach. Tanner also honed in on the fingernail as well. And at the time, there was only one option, more sophisticated testing on the fingernail. The former Armed Forces Institute of Pathology specialized in collecting the pathological specimens for medical evaluation, which that place is now closed, FYI. Federal officials at first declined to participate in the KFC investigation, prompting the Texas Attorney General's office to seek assistance from the Texas lawmakers Phil Graham and Sam Johnson and other influential associates who peppered the agency with helpful requests. Federal examiners eventually agreed to help examine the fingernail using a combination of microphotography and digital analysis. Reporting in October 1996, the tiny sliver of fingernail everyone thought belonged to Menkins actually belonged to Mary Tyler, one of the victims.
No.
Yep.
Wait a second. So during the autopsy, so we're completely bypassed the fact that Mary had a ripped
Because you
fingernail?
remember in part 1, when I was talking about the autopsies of the victims,
yes,
they noted in Mary Tyler's autopsy that one of her fingernails had been ripped away. But
okay,
they compared the fingernail sliver that fell out of Johnson's waistband, and they didn't think it was a match.
Oh my God.
But it was.
So
it was
whole
hers.
time, this whole case has been hinging on
this freaking fingernail. And
one
it's
of the
Mary's.
one of the victims' fingernails.
And it's Mary's fingernail. Yep.
Okay.
So crazy. So there's that. Mankins, I was just about to read again. Tanner called this news her oh crap moment, putting her almost back to square one on the case, which had been entirely focused on Mankins and this damn fingernail. As both Tanner and Wolf assumed their search for new leads, DNA experts at the Texas Department of Public Safety lab in Garland, Texas, decided to do their own probing. The lab still had custody of the original blood evidence recovered from the restaurant in 1983. So forensic experts decided to test the items to see if any advances in technology could help pinpoint the suspects. In 2001, Lorna Beasley performed DNA typing on the box, because remember there's this white box that was supposed to hold like receipts or something that they found that had the blood all over it, and this napkin that they found. Then entered the data into the Combined DNA Index System, also known as CODIS. The system identified 2 Texas prison inmates, Darnell Hartsfield and Romeo Pinkerton.
And we heard those names.
Yes,
in the beginning.
And fun fact, everyone. Steve Sharon, our father-in-law. We need to name these segments something like Steve, like a Sharon segment, Steve Sharon segment. Like a hot pause if we have something that Steve's told us about a case. Steve arrested Pinkerton several times before.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So he said he was a troublemaker.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, Steve very, very much remembers this case. So yeah, fun fact done. Okay. So yeah, it identifies them as being at the restaurant. Hartsfield's DNA was found on the box, and Pinkerton's was on the napkin. The result also excluded Mankins as ever having a role in the murders. Both Hartsfield and Pinkerton were on the first suspect list several lines under Mankins' name, but they seemed to have had airtight alibis at the time. But the DNA is proving otherwise. Tanner was shocked when she received the news. It was time to update the families. At a hotel conference room in Tyler, Texas, Tanner, in front of the family, said, quote, "I'm here today to tell you that basically what you've known for 20 years was wrong," end quote. The prosecutor cautioned the families that justice would not come overnight and urged them to remain strong, as there were many loose ends to tie up. Tanner and Wolf decided to start back at the beginning and take a fresh look at each victim's clothing to seek out random stains or anything that could have been overlooked, such as the suspect's blood. When they reached Opie Hughes's work uniform, now remember, Opie was the 5th victim that was found several yards away from the other bodies, and she was not in the same position they were. She was clutching like the grass, like she, that's who she was. When they reached her like little bag of all of her clothes in there, they noticed something. There was an unusual stain on her bra. They decided to try and take a look at her underwear, but they could not find none. Looking through the notes from the medical examiner's report, there was no report of her having underwear, which they thought was really odd because she's in a KFC uniform. She was the 39-year-old, I believe. She was either 39 or 37. And she was married. She was in this uniform there, like she would be wearing underwear usually in this like polyester slacks. So they found that weird. So then they examined the crotch of the pants and noticed some discoloration, apparently overlooked in earlier investigation. Tanner suspected it could be semen.
I wondered when you said she was like several yards away and not in the same position, that she was clutching in her hands. I'm like, I just feel like she was assaulted. Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me what it is.
So they took the pants to Tyler police, who used a forensic light to confirm the presence of bodily fluids, such as semen and blood. The pants were then taken to Garland the next morning to the Texas Department of Public Safety DNA lab so the substances could be identified, maybe pinpointing sex and race. Beasley phoned from the lab and announced yet another twist in the case. She informed Tanner that they had almost a full DNA panel from the semen specimen, but the bad news was it was not a match to the suspects. So now they're like, crap.
Okay, but this is a third person.
There's a third person.
Right. There's a third person. Okay.
Tanner decided to hold off on the indictment and instead work with Wolf to learn the identity of the man whose semen was found in Opie's pants. Her husband was ruled out automatically, or very soon. So Tanner turned to collecting DNA. This part cracks me up. So Tanner and Wolf turned to collecting DNA from other sources. Okay. I really hope y'all can't hear that. My children are running.
It's the sound of children playing.
Yeah. If you hear little footsteps running, it's my children running on the deck outside. Just ignore it. It's fine, everyone. Moving on. So they turned to, her and Wolf turned to collecting DNA samples from other sources, primarily the people that are being summoned to testify before one of the 4 grand juries considering evidence in the case. So remember, we still have a grand jury going through all the evidence and everything during all of this. And people are being summoned to them to testify in front of them. Sometimes witnesses were simply asked if they wanted to submit a DNA sample so that they could be excluded as a suspect. In other instances, the investigator tried a sneak approach. Investigator Wolf would offer them a drink of water before they would go in, and the nervous men would usually drink the water and then return the cup, bearing a saliva sample to Wolf, who sealed it in a bag and shipped it off to the lab for analysis. Others would turn down the water but accept a slice of peppermint-flavored gum, and then Wolf was able to collect the gum because she would tell them, "You're not allowed to chew gum in the courtroom. Spit it out."
That's funny.
She's a quick one.
That's sneaky.
Yeah. Cigarette butts and inmate mail sent to county judges were also confiscated and sent to the lab for testing. This part's funny too. One particular inmate vehemently denied the woman's request for his DNA, only to send them a letter further explaining why he refused. The envelope was sealed with his saliva.
Of course it was.
The inmate was later ruled out, but the women found a little humor in the irony of it all. How crazy would that have been, though, if that was the guy?
Yeah.
Like, oh, thank you. In all, DNA from about 180 men were tested. That is a crap ton of suspects.
Do we have a hit?
But authorities were unable to find a match to the semen specimen.
Gosh.
Is that not crazy?
Yes, it's frustrating.
It was 2003, a year after the DNA linked Hartsfield and Pinkerton to the restaurant. Tanner believed she had enough evidence to indict Hartsfield, but the case was still riddled with problems.
Why aren't these guys rolling over on this third person?
I don't know. I don't know.
You know?
I don't know. It's wild. Texas Ranger Dowell and Elliott's testimony was critical to the investigation, but they were advancing in age, and there was still a critical lack of documentation. Michael Jimerson, Rusk County's new district attorney, received word that a prosecutor with the Texas Attorney General's office wanted to meet with him. Tanner wanted to update him on where they were at in the case, and she explained that they had DNA on 2 people and were continuing to look for the third. But at this point, Tanner was receiving a lot of criticism for sitting on the case and not going forward with the prosecution of the other 2 guys. After listening to her updates, Jimerson advised Tanner that she needed to go with what she had and that this had hung over Rusk County for long enough. Tanner was a little bit nervous. Authorities had Hartsfield's DNA at the scene, but little else linking him to the killings. No murder weapons, no fingerprints or anything like that. In the fall of 2005, Tanner and her team went after Hartsfield for lying to the special KFC grand jury charged with reviewing the case evidence. Grand jury proceedings are confidential, but the longtime suspect apparently told jurors he had never stepped foot inside that fast food restaurant, even though Tanner had evidence to prove otherwise. Investigators searching the restaurant for evidence had located the white box used for storing cash register tape splattered in the blood. And like I said, that it matched Hartsfield's. As a result, Hartsfield, then 44, was facing a life sentence, not for killing the 5 people inside the KFC, but lying about it. So they're trying to get him on something, and they know for a fact they can get him on this. So they go for it. The bloody box was Tanner's key piece of evidence, but winning the opportunity to introduce it as such hinged on the credibility of the retired Texas Rangers, Elliott and Dowell. So their testimony of them verifying that that box was in fact at KFC and they took it from KFC to wherever it needed to go, because you have to remember the chain of custody in this case is all effed up and all of that wasn't well documented. And an evidence log has been lost. So the testimony of these 2 Texas Rangers is critical to that.
But where would they have gotten his blood to put it on the box to frame him?
I think they're saying because the defense would then say, we don't know for a fact that box was in the KFC.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
Okay.
The day of the trial.
No,
work. Okay.
Oh, it probably is work, but that's okay.
It's okay. We're all used to interruptions on this podcast, are we not, everybody?
Yes, we are.
The day of the trial, Tanner and Wolf, joined by Jimerson, spent a few moments assembling their case materials. Defense attorney Joe Shoemate was also getting ready. State District Judge Clay Gossett called the case to order. Tanner, in her opening arguments, tried to ward off the damage, telling jurors the case had problems, but testimony from the original officers at the scene would place the evidence at the KFC and prove Hartsfield lied about never being there. Tanner called a parade of witnesses to help visualize the enormity of the case. She addressed the chain of custody concerns and investigative challenges right up front. Elliott testified he saw the bloody box when he arrived at the restaurant, but didn't collect it as evidence because he was then summoned to Rusk County to the oil field to help investigate the discovery of the 5 bodies. Dowell said he couldn't specify which officer first collected the box as evidence, but he was the one who transported the box and other evidence to the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Lab in Tyler for testing.
Good.
Former Tyler Police Department crime scene commander Doug Collard testified there wasn't much by way of fingerprints to work with at the time. He said the restaurant was a bad place to try and retrieve fingerprints because everything was coated in a layer of grease, which we talked about that in part 1. Pirtle, the Kilgore police detective, testified a lot of things went wrong in the case, starting with the photographs taken of the crime scene. He told how most of the film was ruined in the development, so there were few images recording the scene inside the restaurant, which that was just heart-wrenching when that happened. The detective said it also took 3 weeks before a lead detective was named to head the investigation up. And by that time, there was so much confusion, it was difficult to get anything done. Years into the investigation, no one could find the original evidence log. Another witness reported seeing a white van in the KFC parking lot the night of the murders and remembered Hartsfield standing in line behind her to place an order. And so if you'll remember in part 1 as well, I told y'all to remember it. Somebody had said that Hartsfield would borrow this white van all the time. He was always seen driving it around. It wasn't his, but he would drive it around. She said the witness said that her and other customers could hear one of the employees on the phone telling someone the night deposit had not been made and there was more than $2,000 in the restaurant. Former restaurant manager Leanne Killingsworth confirmed about $2,000 was taken from the restaurant. She said the deposit represented a record day of business, and the restaurant should have never had that much money on hand per company policy. The manager and assistant manager, which Mary Tyler was the assistant manager, if everybody can remember that. They were required to make daily deposits, and that didn't happen that day. She stated, crying, quote, "I guess in hindsight as 2020, we both got complacent and just agreed to make the deposit the next day," end quote. Yeah. Lorraine Beasley, DNA supervisor with the DPS crime lab in Garland, testified the blood found on the box belonged to Hartsfield. In a surprising turn of events, once again, Shoemate called his client to the stand. Hartsfield insisted on taking the stand in his own defense against the advice of counsel, Shoemate said. Shoemate asked the man if he had ever visited the KFC in Kilgore. Quote, "I have no recollection of ever being at the KFC," end quote. Hartsfield said. You know, his attorney was just probably sitting there going, son of a bitch. Hartsfield said, then, quote, "I feel like I'm being framed," end quote. On cross-examination, Tanner locked eyes with Hartsfield. She was probably like, yeah, buddy. Saying, quote, "So I'm going to ask you again. Have you ever been to the KFC restaurant in Kilgore?" His response was no. Tanner continued questioning him if he had a friend who owned a white van and that it was true that he borrowed the van from time to time. Hartsfield replied to those questions, no. Tanner then asked, "Is it true you worked for an oil field company shortly before the murders?" And he said, "That is true." And she said, "No further questions," because they were found in an oil field, the bodies. Which I didn't know that until I read that part. And I was like, oh, mic drop, Tanner. Good job. Jurors took a little more than 2 hours to find him guilty of aggravated perjury. Hartsfield showed no emotion upon hearing the sentence, life in prison. Relatives of the 5 victims were seen weeping and hugging. This was not a capital murder conviction, but he would be behind bars nonetheless. Tanner felt a wave of relief. Her and Wolf were making progress. Tanner told Wolf later, quote, "We still have a long way to go before this thing is over. Now comes the hard part. Now we have to convict them of murdering those poor people," end quote. The quiet Bowie County courthouse in New Boston seemed to transform, overnight into a sea of spectators and news media. Romeo Pinkerton's trial, expected to take several weeks, was moved to the small town 120 miles northeast of Tyler due to decades of extensive media coverage. Judge Clay Gossett presided over it once again. Ultimately, the same science that freed Mankins from suspicion is what linked the crime to the 2 cousins, Hartsfield and Pinkerton. Defense attorneys Jeff Haas and David Griffith anticipated Tanner's tactic, but they also had a game plan. They wanted to plant that one seed of doubt. Griffith claimed in 1983, since they had no known knowledge of DNA, then consequently, they wouldn't be able to know how to preserve it or protect it from contamination properly. So that was his argument, basically saying the DNA evidence in this case could not be trusted. The state began its case against Pinkerton by starting at the beginning, summoning family members to testify about the events leading up to the murders. Then former KFC manager Leanne Killingsworth acknowledged under cross-examination there had been a series of recent petty thefts happening with the restaurant. Griffith pressed asking about the Miller's rough friends. So Kimberly Miller's rough friends. Killingsworth said Mary Tyler was indeed concerned about her daughter's choice of friends. So apparently Kimberly liked to run around with kind of a rough set of friends. And there was like a series of these little petty thefts within the store. And so Griffith, which is the, defense attorney, is really honing on that little detail there. After this, state witness Lorraine Beasley, who served as the DNA lab supervisor for DPS, stated she attended the September 1st, 2001 meeting with the Attorney General's office to examine different items of the victim's clothing that were never tested by DPS. The decision was made to test the clothing as well as retest the napkin held previously by another lab during the case involving Jimmy Mankins Jr. At that time, the DNA did not match any of the victims or Mankins. Beasley went on to say when they tested the clothing, a blood stain on Monty Lander's shirt did not belong to the victim, and there was never a match to any known person. Tanner took this opportunity to display all of the victim's clothing so jurors could see the items being discussed. Beasley testified that her and her boss, Manuel Valdez, decided it might be worth a second look with case advances in science turning up something new. Back in 1983, obviously the tests were limited for blood, but with the advancement of DNA testing, it was possible to learn much more about the person's blood. She went on to say tests on another key piece of evidence, a bloody napkin, pinpointed the identity of another known individual, Pinkerton. Authorities obtained DNA samples from Pinkerton for comparison, and the results confirmed the findings. Another witness, inmate Ronald Knoll, said he had been incarcerated in federal prison in Seagoville for facilitating a cell phone in the commission of a felony. I don't know what the heck that means, but he was in there for it. But it was while he was in there in Smith County Jail, he met Romeo Pinkerton. Knoll goes on to say that while spending time in a holding cell, for some reason, I don't get this part. Listen to this. Knoll goes on to say that while spending time in a holding cell, he reviewed Pinkerton's case file.
Well, I mean, if it's public record,
I guess, yeah. Which I guess they're just in there reviewing case files. Yeah, I guess. I thought that was really weird, which outlined key components of the investigation and the significance of the bloody napkin. He thought it was odd that Pinkerton asked if the DNA could still be on that napkin. Knoll told Assistant State Prosecutor Lorraine Pops that Pinkerton confided that he lied to authorities, telling them that he was stuck during bad weather in Houston area at the time of the murders, when in fact he was in Tyler. A big moment in testimony came from a former Smith County Jail inmate turned state witness who said Pinkerton seemed to know details about the slayings others would not. The witness told jurors he spent about 8 months in jail awaiting transfer to another facility after pleading guilty to drug charges. During his time there, he met Pinkerton, who was about to be tried for capital murder. He said he seemed quiet and laid back. And then they apparently started playing chess together all the time. Okay. As they do in jail. When another cellmate pinpointed Pinkerton's picture to the news in the newspaper, the witness said that Pinkerton stated that was his business and that nobody should be discussing it. Pinkerton later brought this subject up on his own to this person, stating, quote, we were playing chess, or this is what the witness is saying, quote, we were playing chess, and he brings this murder thing up from the article and asked what I knew about it. And I told him I didn't know about it and that I basically didn't want to know about it. But when the witness asked Pinkerton about it, he received an alarming response. Pinkerton pretended to put a gun up to his head and pull a trigger of an imaginary handgun. What an idiot. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. While the court was in recess, a window of opportunity happened. Pinkerton's attorneys informed Tanner they wanted to talk. As the spectators prepared to leave, relatives of the victims were ushered into an adjoining room for a closed-door meeting after this. When they emerged about an hour later, they were very tight-lipped and intense. A few days later, as jurors made their way back into the courtroom after a weekend off, Gossett welcomed them with a few words of praise, but then he stated, we've had some developments. Pinkerton had agreed to plead guilty to all 5 counts of murder, receiving 5 life sentences. Entering a plea of guilt spared him from the death penalty, but it also meant that the remainder of his days would be behind bars. The agreement did not require him to divulge any details of the crime.
Oh my gosh. So he doesn't have to give them anything.
Nope.
He's just like, I'm guilty. Let me write out my 5 lives. And
and he never does.
That's really frustrating since we still have a third individual unidentified.
We have a lot. Yeah. Gossett said the family had been updated earlier and agreed to the terms of the agreement. Families of the victims, though, took turns addressing Pinkerton face to face. One of the first people to speak was Opie Hughes' daughter, Myra. She stated, quote, sorry, quote,
write that down, Elizabeth.
Oh, Lord. She stated, quote, part of my life died with her, as she read from a sheet of paper. She went on to describe that their last conversation had been an argument, and you hate that. But she felt so fortunate that it ended with Opie telling her that she loved her. Then Jack Hughes, Opie's husband, addressed Pinkerton, stating, quote, I want you to think of me for the next 100 years. When you draw your last breath of life, I want you, that's when your judgment will truly begin. Which I found that really haunting. Linda Landers, Monty's mother, addressed the killer as well, stating, quote, there isn't a day that goes by I don't remember that laugh, that little curl of hair he had on his head when he was a baby. My heart is pulled out from the roots, end quote. The convicted man showed no reaction to any of their statements. Kathy Hamilton, David Maxwell's sister, also took the stand, stating, quote, our family fell apart from the stress. Her father's health had declined, the family business had fallen into bankruptcy, and years later, her other brother committed suicide. Ugh. So sad. Following this, Lena Maxwell took the stand. She said, quote, I don't think you're really sorry for what you did, and there isn't any way for me to shame you into it, end quote. Her son, David Maxwell Jr., because remember, she was pregnant at the time, then 23, followed up his mother's remarks saying Pinkerton robbed him of a lifetime of memories. Kimberly Miller then took the stand as well. She described the hatred in her heart, her stare fixed on Pinkerton. She stated, quote, I hope you miss everyone you've ever loved, if you ever loved anyone at all, end quote. A relative of Joey Johnson described the teenager as someone who loved life, people in church, but her memories of him were forever destroyed. She stated, quote, I never thought this day would come and I would get to confront the monster of my dreams. I can't think of him without thinking of you, and I don't want to think of you. You make me sick, end quote. So sad. September 9th, 2008, the capital murder trial for Darnell Hartsford began. So he's serving his life sentence already for aggravated perjury. But now Tanner is going after him for the murders as well. Another change of venue had been granted, ensuring that the defendant would receive a fair trial, moving the proceedings from East Texas to Bryan College Station. Defense attorneys Dawn Killingsworth and Thad Davison huddled together, reviewing several pages of notes before the proceedings got underway. Hartsfield faced multiple life sentences. The state removed the death penalty from the case, sparing Hartsfield the possibility of living the remainder of his days on Texas's death row. This trial went about the same as Pinkerton's, which I'm not sure why they removed the death penalty from him. I mean, I understand with Pinkerton because he pleaded guilty. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they did it with this one. This trial went about the same as Pinkerton's. Witnesses testified and were cross-examined, but ultimately the jurors took less than 2 hours to reach their conclusion. Hartsfield stood and faced a jury to await his punishment, and the foreman, Bradford Smith, relayed the jury's findings, guilty of capital murder.
Good.
Hartsfield's eyes remained downcast, and Gossett imposed 5 consecutive life sentences on him. While serving his time at the Darrington Unit, a remote high-security prison, Hartsfield was interviewed by the Tyler Morning Telegraph, stating, quote, I am a good person, even though I'm in prison. I've been framed for a crime I didn't commit. I have it on appeal, but I doubt anything will come of it, end quote.
Okay.
I mean, regardless of the murders and stuff, Hartsfield was still a bad guy. Like he had done some bad stuff. So no, I'm going to argue that, sir. You're not a good guy. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. May 4th, 2022, Hartsfield died of a stroke in his jail cell. So there's that. Pinkerton refuses most interviews, but in a brief interview with Tyler Morning Telegraph after his trial, he was quick to claim his innocence. Now all of a sudden Pinkerton's like, oh no, I didn't do it. Stating, quote, I didn't do this. I only said that I did to avoid the death penalty. That's all I have to say, end quote. Which, okay, if you didn't do it,
oh my God,
you wouldn't get the death penalty because you'd go to trial and then they'd prove you innocent.
Well,
there's that. He is currently serving his life sentences at the James V. Aldred unit in Wichita Falls. In 2025, advanced DNA testing was done on the semen found in Opie Hughes's uniform by the Texas DPS Sexual Assault Kit Initiative Program, and they found a match.
Shut up.
Devin Riggs. Riggs was not a suspect at all during this whole thing. He was a Texas native with a criminal history in Texas and California. Unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, Riggs died in 2010.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Is that not
so
insane?
He lived his life free because we couldn't pin him on DNA. Mm-hmm. And the two jerks in prison wouldn't roll over on this third person.
Yeah. Never did.
He could have been gotten for rape and, murder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And instead he just lived I'm sure, I don't know what kind of life he lived, but
yeah. I mean, and then the last thing I have is investigators still don't know how Riggs is tied to Hartsfield or Pinkerton. They still don't know where he came in at. Is that not wild?
I really wish that Pinkerton's the only one still alive, you said?
Mm-hmm.
I really wish he would roll over. Like, give us the story now. Yeah. You're not getting out. You're going to die in here. Just give
Pinkerton's
it to us.
the one that won't talk to anybody.
Just give it to us. Tell us now.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah. Write your own story, Pinkerton.
Yeah. And that's the KFC murders.
Oh my gosh. Well, that was full of a lot of frustrating twists.
Of details.
Yeah, a lot of details.
A lot of details that I had no idea of. And it's funny because when I was talking to Steve about it, I was like, you remember the KFC murders? And he just rolled his eyes. He was like, oh my God.
No.
He was like, that was a hot mess. Yeah. But yeah, he was very familiar with Pinkerton and Hartsfield. So yeah.
Wow.
Insane.
I'm sure because they were stand-up citizens.
Such stand-up citizens, obviously.
Well, thank you for that, Megan.
You're welcome. My voice hurts.
Let's call it a day.
Let's call it a day, everybody. Everybody,
you know what to do.
Like, I don't know what time you're listening to this on Monday, but just call it a day.
Yeah, call it a day.
Just call it a day. Yeah, just go home and get in bed. Because I hope I get to do that on Monday. I won't, but I will hope so. Okay.
Like, subscribe, and share. Nope. Mm-hmm. Yes. Like, subscribe, and share.
Rate and review.
Email us at inlawsandcrime@gmail.com.
If you have a telltale. Yeah. And keep listening to us, please, even though we're a Hot Mess Express.
It's okay. We all have off days. This was just one.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And keep your roots deep.
And your head on a swivel.
Bye.